Welcome to Three Count Commentary. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today we're going to talk about WWE Most Wanted Treasures, the Sergeant Slaughter and Iron Sheik episode. So this was actually, this is a deep cut because some of this is actually pre-WrestleMania. So it might be a little too deep for some young people. And it's almost out of my reach, but you talk about, a pair of guys who are, really old school. You talk about Sergeant Slaughter and the Iron Sheik. So Sergeant Slaughter was recruited to do the search. Iron Sheik is essentially an invalid. He can't really walk, and he's in a wheelchair, I believe, maybe even still. So Sergeant Slaughter is gonna have to do the search. So obviously they picked three things they wanted to talk about. They wanted to get. One was Sergeant Slaughter's campaign cover, which is his military hat, and swagger stick, which is his whip. They were valued between $3,000 and $5,000. They were looking for the curly-toed boot that the Iron Sheik was wearing during his boot camp match with Sergeant Slaughter. They were ring-worn boots. They were worth between $2,500 and $6,000, and they were also looking for a pair of the Iron Sheik's Persian clubs that he used to use for his Persian club challenge. They were expecting to pay between $8,000 and $10,000 for those. So Sergeant Slaughter kind of knew where all of this stuff was, if we're being honest. He knew where the Persian clubs were, and he kind of had an idea where the Sergeant campaign cover and the swagger stick were. The Sergeant campaign cover and the swagger stick, he actually had it at his house. He kept a lot of his own memorabilia, so he's one of those guys who just had stuff. And he told the story of, he saw this movie called D.I. Jack Webb, and he saw the character in that movie and decided to do it. And that's where he came up with the Sergeant Slaughter character. So he went to the Army Navy store, and he just picked up the campaign cover, which again is a hat, and the swagger stick, which is like a whip, like a horse whip almost. And that's when he started doing the Sergeant Slaughter character. It was in 1975. He was working in Kansas City, which is Central States, I believe. And he had wore the campaign cover in so much merchandise. Like a lot of the merchandise back in those days, especially when he was doing G.I. Joe and all that stuff, a lot of that stuff had that hat in it. And since he's only had the one hat, he hadn't had multiple hats. It was really worth something, and he only had the one swagger stick. He never bought this stuff again. He only had one. He kept up with his gimmicks. And he also had his Hall of Fame plaque and his stuff. They didn't really want that though, but there was also an interesting thing in there that everybody apparently who went to Stephanie and Triple H's wedding got a gold coin. So he still had that too. So he had like a bunch of stuff at his house. But they wanted the swagger stick and the campaign cover. And he says, hey, look, if you guys are going to have a museum, it's better off with you. And he gave it away. He gave it to them. So that was pretty sweet. It was pretty nice of him for him to give it away. And I thought that was really cool. He also told the story of the Iraqi sympathizer Sergeant Slaughter, that essentially after he left the WWF the first time, after he did the big feud with Iron Sheik and all those guys, and then he went to work for Hasbro. He went to be a spokesman, the first real life G.I. Joe, and he took the Sergeant Slaughter character over to G.I. Joe, and they made a ton of money off merchandise. The amount of money that the Sergeant Slaughter made off that, and how notable he came off that, is underrated. Like people talk about snapping to a Slim Jim or for Randy Savage. This was on that level as far as I was concerned. Now, as far as I know, from the various stories that I've heard, Sergeant Slaughter was becoming very popular. He was a super over babyface due to the Iron Sheik angle. And Hasbro approached him about being the first live action G.I. Joe. And since Hasbro is a different company that makes the action figures, and WWE, I believe, was doing LGNs at the time. So basically, that's two different companies. So Sarge went to Vince and said, hey, I want to do this Sergeant Slaughter thing with Hasbro. He owns the gimmick anyway. He started the gimmick way before he came to the WWF. And Vince was like, hey, we can't do that because we already have an exclusive contract with these other guys. So they had to mutually agree to part ways. So this is why Sergeant Slaughter, wasn't involved during the height of the rock and wrestling era and all that stuff. But I think now how the contract ended. Of course, I'm talking Sergeant Slaughter's contract with Hasbro. There are some people who believe that Sergeant Slaughter's contract with Hasbro ended because he did the Iraqi sympathizer gimmick, and there are some people who said that the Iraqi sympathizer gimmick came after that. So, however that goes, he was not with Hasbro anymore when he started doing the Iraqi sympathizer gimmick, and that's where he told a story on Treasures about the Iraqi sympathizer thing, that he got a call from Vince saying that he wanted to sell out this gigantic arena in California. They ended up not selling it out. There's also some wishy-washy stuff about that too, where the official WWE position is sort of a mixture of ticket sales and death threats, which I can believe the death threats that were real. I do believe that there were some death threats. But there was also they went to a smaller building because of lower ticket sales. But moving buildings is kind of extreme. You can half sell a building, but it's just one of those things that where the dirt sheets know the quote unquote real reason why things happen. But you really wouldn't see or come in contact with death threats. So I don't know. But that's really where the whole thing comes from. And they started telling the story about the Iraqi sympathizers during the Gulf War at the time. And Vince wanted to do something political. And he thought that turning the guy who had been pro-America and saying that America is now soft and weak and all that kind of stuff, and turning him into a heel to fight Hulk Hogan, he thought that would draw big money. And instead, it didn't really work out. But I really hate that they turned him heel, though. But it's the perfect heel turn. It was perfect. Anyway, it was very underrated. Sergeant Slaughter is very underrated. A lot of the stuff that he did was pre WrestleMania. That was more his thing, and most of the WrestleManias will know that he wrestled against Hulk Hogan at one time, and he was a champion for a very short amount of time. So that was still very cool to sit down and hear Sarge tell stories about that. But they went to Bob Backlund's house. They went to Bob Backlund's house, and Bob Backlund is another very important figure in this. I love how they put these Treasures episodes together because they do tie in. If it's more than one guy, those two guys are clinched together. Like Sheik and Slaughter are linked together, but there's a third person there, and that's Bob Backlund. Now, Bob Backlund, of course, longtime WWF champion. I'm surprised they didn't want to do anything with him on it. But they went to his house because he had the Persian clubs. So Bob Backlund had to tell the story of, and Bob Backlund is just so active. He's rolling around on the ground. He's in character, being Mr. Bob Backlund, shouting and putting guys in the Cobra Clutch. It was adorable. It was great. This guy's got to be 80 something years old. He's got to be at least old as Vince. Vince is 75. So Backlund has to be at least 77, 78. Got to be somewhere near 80. Like, he's in tremendous shape. He still looks dopey. Still got the big wide ears, the big wide country boy eyes and stuff like that. It's tremendous. Bob Backlund is great. But he's basically they talked about him calling out Sergeant Slaughter for how he whipped him with the swagger stick in the 1980s. It was 1982 or something like that. And leading to, I don't think they had a boot camp match. I don't remember seeing that. But they talked about that, and he was still kind of burnt up about that. But it was pretty funny. And he has two pairs of Iron Sheik's Persian clubs. The Persian club gimmick, for people who don't know, maybe you're a little too young. The Iron Sheik, similar to what you may have saw where the world's strongest man challenge. Mark Henry would basically challenge guys to lift what he can lift. And then they did the old gimmick with Ryback and all that kind of stuff. Or they do like the Master Lock Challenge with like Chris Masters, who can break the Master Lock. So what the Iron Sheik, it was the Persian clubs. It was these two giant clubs. They're about 80 pounds a piece. And you have to, curl them over the back of your head. And that was his gimmick, is that he was the Iranian strongman. He was a super athlete, sort of the Rusev of his day. And, he would challenge Americans to try to do it. So like different American strongmen and bodybuilders and stuff would try to do the Persian clubs, and they couldn't do it because you don't do these things in the United States. Nobody knows how they work, right? So Vince McMahon Sr. put Bob Backlund up to doing it. And Bob Backlund was telling the story that he had never trained with these things before. He didn't know what they were, but he was told to go and do it. And so he did. And he actually was able to. He wasn't as good as the Iron Sheik with him. Obviously, it was his first time doing it. But he was actually able to do it. He was actually able to curl the Persian clubs. And because he was able to curl the Persian clubs, Iron Sheik gave him a pair of Persian clubs. So that's why he had those. But he had two pair. He had another pair too. And he says that, AJ Francis says, well, you got two. These are personal. There were some white ones, the ones that he actually did the angle on. Because those Persian clubs, the white ones, they led to him losing the title. That was because Iron Sheik attacked him from behind and, hit him with the clubs and everything. That directly led to him losing the title to the Iron Sheik, which set up Hulk Hogan. So the story of these items is just as important as the items themselves. So he wanted to keep the white ones that he had, but he had some brown ones, some really heavy wooden ones. And of course, the challenge was that if AJ Francis could curl the Persian clubs, he could take them. So it took him a while. Bob Backlund had to coach him, but he was able to go back and forth with the Persian clubs over his head, and Bob Backlund let him keep them. So that was pretty cool. They got all of that stuff for free. Now, what they actually did have to pay for was one of the Iron Sheik's boots. So they talked extensively about the boot camp match between the Iron Sheik and Bob Backlund. Not Bob Backlund, but the Iron Sheik and Sergeant Slaughter. And they wanted to get his boots, the curly-toed boot that the Iron Sheik was wearing during that specific match, because it was likely going to have the blood of Sergeant Slaughter on it. So they went to Long Island, New York, where they met a man named John Pentozzi, and he has a tremendous collection. He had an entire collection of action figures with every action figure was signed. The entire line, even hard to find joints, he had signed. This guy was a former ring announcer. He's a former timekeeper. He just had a tremendous joint. Like, he had posters and everything. It was great. So he had a boot in his Iron Sheik boot in his collection. So AJ Francis, said, hey, let's do business. So the guy says that this is it's going to cost you a crazy, stupid price. You'd be crazy to offer it. I'd be stupid to refuse it, because it's one of the top 5 things that I have. And so AJ Francis says $2,500. Nope. The guy says at least double. So AJ Francis was like, how about 4,000? Like 4,000 is not double 2,500. So the guy says, how about this? 5,000. And then AJ Francis says, 5,000, we got a deal. He's like, how about $5,100? So the guy ended up selling the boot for $5,100. And then we find out later it's not even the boot from the boot camp match. These boots were from WrestleMania 2. So it was a different set of boots. They were still, of course, the Iron Sheik's boots, but they were not from the match that they were looking for. But since they didn't have anything from the Iron Sheik anyway, they were willing to keep them. And, because it's cool memorabilia. He was dumped in a battle royal, but they wore ring-worn boots, and they were from a big event. It's just not the big event that they wanted. They wanted an earlier set of boots. So maybe they're still out there and they'll find them eventually. But they got something for the Iron Sheik. They got quite a bit of they got, the Persian clubs. They got the boot. They also got the swagger stick and the campaign cover from Sergeant Slaughter. They also got some other stuff from Sergeant Slaughter, like his fatigues and different things like that in the warehouse. So this episode was very pre-WrestleMania heavy. For older fans, this is probably pretty good, pretty fun. If you're a fan of the old New York territory before it decided to go national. So this was really good. Well, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Like this video, share this video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys for your time. Throw some cash if you can at the Cash App or the subscribe star. And I'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace.